Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hey!
to the, I think, fifth episode of the New Adventures of K-Man and Spence. Happy Batman Day to all you wonderful nerds out there. Of course, I'm Spence and joined by K-Man Kieran Collins. Say hello, Kieran.
Can you hear me? It's me, Margaret.
I don't get it.
I don't really get it either. It's some Deadpool reference that I never
Ah,
understood. Yeah.
gotcha. Well, there you go. Like I said earlier, it's Batman Day. Woohoo! Normally our episodes go up on Fridays, but it's Saturday, and it's fitting that we waited to do it on Batman Day. So, got him on my shirt right here. Good old Bats. We'll talk about this a little later, reflect on the character. But today we're going to start with a normal structure and what we happen to read this week. Any volumes, graphic novels, omnibuses. Maybe someday we'll buy an omnibus and talk about it. But Kieran, we went to Barnes and Noble together and
That's
you
correct.
got a graphic novel that think you finished.
Which one is this?
Super Sons?
Oh yeah. I finished Super Sons. Yeah.
Gotcha. Talk a little bit
Um,
about Super Sons.
yeah, so Super Sons reminded me a lot of Nova, which is the one I'm pointing at. It's right behind me here. The Sam Alexander Nova run, written by I think Ed Guinness. He might be the artist for it. I'm not sure, but I love that run. The first volume of that's really good. Super Sons, both art style wise and in the tone of it and everything, reminded me a lot of that short-lived Nova run, except Super Sons is like still going on, and some of the other issues I saw of it in the store when I was buying Volume One, from the looks of it, it continues on with that quality, and the writer likes that. And I love Damian. I'm a very big Damian Wayne fan. I was saying to myself while I was reading it how much I think that, like, in me and Spencer's dynamic, Spencer is 100% Jonathan Kent, and I'm Damian Wayne. It's very accurate when you
I'm
read it.
okay with that
Yeah,
comparison.
yeah, it's very real. Hades and Zeus, dude, Hades and Zeus. But but with I mean, it was great. It was just great. I like that kind of like kids content. I feel like a lot of comics nowadays go more towards the gritty, more like '90s appeal. Shout out Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy. But Super Sons is a nice family friendly adventure. It's got an interesting tone in its villain. I hope that I would like to see it probably like a little bit more out of that, and I'd love to see them go up against a villain who's actually like a really well fleshed out story. The first volume was more an introduction to the characters, which is the part I like, but I'm excited to see them get thrown into an actual story like Deceased. I mean, maybe I'm just excited to read Deceased on Killables, or not Killables, the Dead Planet, the new
Well,
one.
both. You haven't read either.
Yeah, but they're not in Unkillables, right?
Correct. Yeah. There's no John or Damian Wayne. Who is the villain of it? That's underdeveloped.
Not underdeveloped necessarily, but I feel like they could have done more, which I guess is underdeveloped. So same thing. But it's this. There was something that happened before the events of the comic where what's the name of that super villain who fights Superman, who fights the Justice League, and he's able to like take on all of their powers. It sounds kind of like Bizarro or Starro, one of those, but not quite. And I can't remember what it is. I wish I had my copy. Oh, I do right here. Hold on, 2 seconds. I'll do my research.
There it is.
Yeah. What does he call himself? It's in the back in the concept art. I got this. There we go. Amazo.
Ah.
Amazo is a classic Justice League villain who can like basically has Taskmaster's ability where can replicate powers. It's like Taskmaster except with the power part. So he can replicate the powers. Like if he fights Superman, then he gets Superman's powers. So this is after there was an Amazo virus that was released to the general public, giving a whole lot of random people, superpowers. And then when they came out with the vaccine because it had bad side effects, about
Mhm.
95% lost their powers, but 5% retained them. And of that 5%, there's a whole family of superheroes who all get it. And one of the kids is this really like psychopathic bully type kid. And he can multiply himself, but he steals a suit from Luthor, and it enhances his powers even more so that he has the Amazo properties with his duplicates. So if he makes a duplicate of himself, he can make the duplicate look exactly like Batman, for example. and then like they're up against a Batman clone essentially with all of Batman's powers without all of Batman's skills.
All of Batman's powers.
Yes,
A
exactly.
total of 0.
Well. To be fair, there's the genius. The intellect. I guess that would count as a power, right? It would have to, under a Mazo logic, anyway. But Superman,
Sure. Yeah.
Superman's a better example. All of Superman's powers, none of Superman's skill. So that's why Damian and John actually stand somewhat of a chance. But it's cool, and also Luthor Superman makes an appearance.
That's cool.
It was during the time of Rebirth when he had that cool like suit and he was playing Superman around Metropolis. So I got to see some of him. I'd love to read that run, honestly, of Luthor as Superman because interesting, good anti-hero, I think.
It would be very cool. Any other thoughts on Super Sons, or should I jump into what I read this week?
It sucks that we haven't read the same stuff because like I'm excited for you to read it too. That's really my main thing is that like the villain was a cool concept because it's basically a spoiled kid who has too many powers and has a lot of demons clearly, and so he's like torturing his family essentially for most of it, which is messed up. But I love the writing for Damian and John, and I think the art's really cool. So Peter J. Tomasi is the writer. George Jimenez is the artist we talked about him last week because he's the guy who got fake canceled for Comicsgate before they realized that Tom King was just being a bit of a dick.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's the same guy. So that was interesting. That was just happen chance that happened. But they both did a smashing job. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I probably won't buy volume 2 for a while because there's other stuff I want to read more. But I'm happy I bought it. I'm happy I read it. And if they release a new Super Sons run, I will pick that up monthly easily.
There you go. Recommendation for Super Sons Volume 1 from the K-Man.
That's right.
I picked up the Unkillables Collected Edition because I hadn't read it, and we recently, I think 2 weeks ago, read Deceased, which I was over the moon about. And Tom Taylor is quickly becoming probably my favorite writer at the moment, at least. I'm loving everything. But I read Unkillables. Might even be better than Deceased. Deceased is a lot more Justice League, big scope action story, whereas Unkillables is kind of more intimate. And it's about just this ragtag group of characters, kind of Suicide Squad-y in a way. They're villains, but they kind of become anti-heroes.
I feel like I'm gonna love it.
It's super great.
That sounds great.
It's super great. It's really, really funny. There is a hilarious running bit between the Creeper and Solomon Grundy that actually had me laughing out loud when I read it. Also, what they do with Cheetah is really funny. Tom Taylor is just awesome. And I'm bummed that no one ever told me about Deceased until recently because I could have been reading this monthly. However, it is nice to kind of binge it in a way. And when we get to our issues, I did pick up the first issue of Dead Planet, which came out a little bit ago. But it's the only one I could find because, as we said a couple of episodes ago as well, DC changed distributors. So all of our local comic shops are in a bit of a tizzy trying to track down back issues, unfortunately. But Unkillables was really funny, really fun. The characters are wonderfully written. It is pretty much unrelated to Deceased. It's the same timeline is happening. I'm wondering if in Dead Planet we'll get some Unkillables crossover with characters. That would be really cool because Dead Planet is the official sequel to Deceased, and this is almost like a spin-off, but it almost feels like a one-shot, like a what if, like what were the villains up to at this time? And not even like the good villains, because like a lot of the good villains died in Deceased, like Joker and other people. But Harley and Poison Ivy are in this as well. So they cross over between both issues, but Deceased Unkillables is awesome. I wish we could go into spoilers, but we haven't read the same thing.
I got a follow-up thing to say on that though, like about Tom Taylor.
Yeah,
the dude's like great quality of work. Everything I've read so far. He also just churns out a crazy amount of actual content. I recently learned that he wrote the run of Wolverine that was out when we were in high school, where X-23 is Wolverine. And that got a lot of acclaim. So he's been on the scene for longer than we've been aware of him, I guess. Him and James Tynion are the two big boys at DC right now, as it appears, which is great because they're both extremely talented.
Killing the game. Also, there is great Cassandra Cain Jim Gordon and Red Hood interactions in this. They kind of opened the book, and it's really funny. And what they do with Jason is wonderful. I know you're a huge Jason Todd guy,
Yeah.
and Red Hood is a lot of fun in this. There's another bit that's really funny. I think what sticks out to me most is most comics I read, like I can acknowledge when a joke is being written and it doesn't make me laugh, but Tom Taylor genuinely makes me laugh out loud while I'm reading, and that's pretty hard to do. Just reading a book and laughing is hard to do. Like kind of
He
how being
maintains,
scared from a book is hard to do.
yeah, from reading Deceased, he has a very good way of maintaining a serious tone while still sprinkling humor in without it seeming like a Marvel movie.
Yeah, if they were gonna do a Deceased movie, like adapting all of these books for some reason, James Gunn would do a hell of an Unkillables because it kind of feels like how I imagine his Suicide Squad will feel, which we're both very excited about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I pretty much can't say a whole lot more without going into spoilers, but it is great. And
Next week I'll try to catch up on everything. We can
Yes.
talk more Deceased. We can have a
You
Deceased
should.
special.
You absolutely should. But with that, high recommend for me. Deceased and Killables might be better than Deceased. I only read it a few days ago, so I'm still sitting with it, but they're both great. This is like one of my favorite stories that I've read. I really enjoy the Deceased story. I never thought I would. I'm not one for zombie apocalypses really, which is ironic because I'm a horror fan. I love horror movies, but Deceased is really, really doing it for me. And even the first issue of Dead Planet, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I loved as well. So with that, we will jump into our news in the superhero Hollywood. And I guess this first topic is not Hollywood, but it's Batman Day. Like I said earlier, woohoo, the Caped Crusader. I think he's 80-something now. I don't think we celebrate on the exact birthday of Batman's first appearance in Detective Comics. I think it's the third Saturday of September is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Just, they do it Thanksgiving style, not a date, but a day of a month.
Yeah.
But Kieran, let's talk about our favorite Batman stories. Just
Okay, great topic.
give me a quick just your favorite Batman stuff. How about that?
Yeah. I'm, as with everything in life, whether it's music, TV show, movies, or comic books, I really love stuff that was produced in the years between like the late 90s, early 2000s. I love comics during that time too. I really, really, really like Batman Hush. That's probably like I put Batman Hush and then like Under the Red Hood as kind of, even though they're not really part one and part two, because I love Red Hood so much, they kind of feel like, because there's a little bit of tie-in in Hush. They foretell Red Hood a little bit in that, and then that's his first appearance. He's one of Hush's like henchmen, and then he comes and becomes his own villain under the Red Hood. Different writers, but like around the same time. I'd probably give Under the Red Hood the slightest edge, just because admittedly, as much as I love Batman, I love Batman in the context of Robin too, and I think that stuff that includes the Bat family, that's one really cool evolution that Batman has taken in his 80 years or whatever. So that's a really cool part about it, is that not only do we have Batman, who obviously is this amazing character,
Sure.
we've also assembled probably one of the best rogues galleries in all of comic books.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, the only one even in competition is Spider-Man.
Well, Spider-Man, let's say, yeah. Him and Spider-Man are like the top two in all comics.
For sure.
Batman, I mean, I'd say Batman's probably a little better, in my opinion.
So would I.
Yeah, but great. And then also, not just villains, also supporting characters. You got Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Damian Wayne. The list goes on and on. Catwoman, Selena Kyle, obviously, like all that kind of stuff. So many cool stories have been told over the years. I love that Batman is my favorite thing about Batman, just this unpowered, but like the most powerful character in DC, really, which is cool.
He has incredible power just by saying he's Batman, which we'll talk about with the Batman issues we caught up on this week. But Batman is amazing. Batman is my second favorite character in all of fiction. Number one is Superman because I'm basic. But it's true. I like when people think of comic books, so those are the things I like. I don't stray too far. I'm not too weird in my tastes, which is both a good and bad thing.
All I'm going to say, you haven't read Talon yet.
It's true. And I really like Tinian's Batman, so I'm excited for that. But my favorite Batman story is, I'm about to sound even more basic, it's The Dark Knight Returns. I think Frank Miller penned the quintessential Bruce Wayne Batman story. I think in that was the first time, at least in my understanding in the history of comics, that it was really presented that Bruce Wayne was the mask and Batman was the man. versus the other way around, which is a lot of people's conception of it, that Bruce Wayne is an act. Bruce Wayne is dead. Bruce Wayne died in the alley with his parents, and Batman lives. And that's Frank Miller really tapped into that. There's a great. I know you haven't read it in a while. When you read it initially in high school, you weren't a big fan of it, but
I remember it a lot though, so
yeah,
delve fully into spoilers.
yeah, and it's there's I mean just the way he writes it, where Bruce Wayne literally while he's being Bruce Wayne is like hearing Batman's voices in his head. Like he really plays up the idea that Bruce Wayne is nuts because Bruce Wayne is nuts. Like he's out of his mind. It's it's extremely dark. It was the first like really dark, intense Batman story. I mean, Joker kills himself in front of Batman. It's incredibly, incredibly dark and powerful, and just it's my version of Batman. My Batman, at least in my head, that I would direct is like a bruiser. He's brutal. He'll beat you to the brink of death and then leave you there and hope someone finds you. He's not going to kill you, but he won't save you. That kind of thing.
It changed comic books forever.
Of course.
Really, yeah.
Unfortunately, the sequels to it suck. And Frank Miller is such a hit and miss writer, at least in my opinion, for most stuff. Like he's just sometimes he strikes gold, and in the case of Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, he wrote, my opinion, like the greatest one shot ever.
Yeah.
And now I think it's technically in the continuity. It is the future. I think it is canon in terms of Batman. It's just he's not there yet, and he probably never will be.
He wrote The Dark Knight Returns, right? And then he took over like the main Batman title, and that was bad from what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's like when he told Robin to fuck off or something in that.
Well, and his all-star Batman and Robin is horrible. That's like pretty well noted as being terrible. However, he also wrote Year One, which for most people is a quintessential Batman origin story. And Year One is amazing. And Year One was basically adapted with Batman Begins. It was obviously with some inspiration, but that story, the way it ends, the way it begins, is very Year One. But yeah, for me, it's Frank Miller Batman all the way. My second favorite is probably, I'm boring again, a very different version of the character, but Jeff Loeb, The Long Halloween, and then
Hush.
Dark Victory, Hush. Like Jeff Loeb is he's probably my second favorite Batman writer, especially The Long Halloween. The Long Halloween is brilliant, and I know you haven't read it, which is a tragedy. I mean, it's right here next to me. You can grab it anytime.
Right in time for Halloween.
Exactly. It's like the title's just a reference to holidays. It's not really Halloween based, but the killer is a serial killer who kills on holidays, and that's the whole thing. There's a lot of great bits with Calendar Man being like, "Oh, this day's gonna kill here," and Bruce is like, "Oh, whatever," and then he does. It's also just a really, really great detective story. And of course, all the rumblings that the Batman, Matt Reeves' upcoming movie with Robert Pattinson, is supposed to be not a direct adaptation, but a lot of inspiration from it, and I could see that in the trailer big time.
Well, Long Halloween is young Batman, right? It's like a prequel kind of thing. Yeah,
it's like Year Two.
Yeah,
which is what Matt Reeves said over and over again at DC Fandom.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of not comic books, but other media Batman, my favorite Batman will forever and always be Michael Keaton. He was the first Batman I saw on screen. I was too young to go see Batman Begins in theaters, and then my parents heard The Dark Knight was incredibly violent, so I didn't see it until it was on TNT, edited for content.
Oh no!
Yeah, first time I saw The Dark Knight was on TNT. I mean, The Dark Knight really isn't that violent. It's very low on blood, so they didn't edit a whole lot.
Yeah.
But my first Batman I saw was I went to Target when I was like 8 years old, and I convinced my dad to buy the 4-pack combo of Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin. And I watched all 4 of those quite a bit, and I always loved Michael Keaton's Batman. So number 1 of all other media besides comic books is Michael Keaton. And the number 2 for me would be Ben Affleck. I think they're pretty closely tied for me. Keaton's nostalgia and also just the first one. And besides West, which almost feels like an entirely different character.
Mm-hmm.
But Affleck, I just said how much I love Frank Miller's Batman, and Affleck is playing that to a T. And Affleck's a huge Frank Miller fan, and you can just tell he looks so much like, minus the gray, not having gray hair, he looks exactly like Miller's Batman. And then the suit is Zack Snyder brought the suit to life perfectly. So, I mean, he doesn't kill in The Dark Knight Returns, so that's like a bigger. Snyder took it even further, that idea. But yeah, I don't know. I know. What are your favorite on-screen Batman?
Well, first of all, just it's funny hearing you say that about the Nolan movies. My experience was totally different of them because I never saw much of my taste in movies growing up was predicated by my dad when it comes to Batman and stuff, especially. And my dad's a much bigger fan of sort of gritty realism over camp, right? My dad's not a camp fan at all. So the earliest Batman movies, the your Val Kilmer, your you just said it a second ago, and I can't
Michael
believe
Keaton.
Michael Keaton. How did I
How
forget?
dare you
How did
throw
I
Val Kilmer in
how,
front of him?
how did I forget Michael Keaton's name on a comics podcast that
He's,
I am co-hosting?
you
That's
just lost your nerd
ridiculous.
card.
I just lost it entirely. But anyway, Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, all those Batmen before.
Clooney.
My dad was always like, oh, they're kind of cheesy, right? And I was like, okay. And I read a little bit of Batman comics when I was young. I really mainly got into comics when I was a teenager, so I really didn't have much experience in Batman other than the Justice League cartoon that we all grew up with on Cartoon Network, whatever it's called, JLA, I think, maybe.
Justice League Unlimited.
Justice League Unlimited. That's probably, or wasn't there one just like Justice League the animated series?
I think it was just called Justice League, and then there was Justice League Unlimited because they built up to it. They did the animated verse where they had the animated series of Batman, Superman, and Static Shock, which was weird that was like in
I love
timeline.
that.
No, it's great. It's just funny that they went from Batman and Superman to doing Static Shock and then Justice League.
Yeah, but John Stewart cartoon Justice League, basically. That's how I identify that particular run. Just also Wally West is the Flash in that too, which is also great. I think he is, right? I think so.
I think it's
Barry. I think is it? Okay, I might be totally wrong. But anyway, on that note though, I went to see Batman Begins in theaters when it first came out with my dad, and I was very, very young. I'd gone to see, like, there's weird exceptions to rules that my parents would make with movies. Like, I saw all the Lord of the Rings movies in theaters, and I like started crying, and all of them had to leave the theater, but I still wanted to go because I liked them. But with Batman Begins, I didn't cry. I didn't get too scared, even though Scarecrow was the bad guy and was very scary. I sat through the whole movie and was totally fine. Also, for The Dark Knight, took it up a whole nother level. I was still very young at the time. We went to see it in IMAX the first time.
Wow. And
that fucking scene where Heath Ledger Joker has that like Batman impersonator guy tied up. You know that scene, and he's like got him all cut up and tied up, and then he kills him at the end of the video recording.
Messed up scene.
That on the IMAX screen, that freaked me out so much when I saw it in theaters. But also, that movie is so good. That being said, my number one favorite Batman is Adam West.
I know.
Even though I grew up with those ones, I got the in high school at some point they released this like really big and beautiful box set for the 60s Batman series, and I have the box set. I haven't watched all of it, but I've seen quite a bit of it. I love Adam West's Batman. It's so fun. It's classic. It's 100% campy. It's a complete rejection of the things I grew up with Batman. It's the complete like opposite of what The Dark Knight is, but also it's absolutely beautiful. I love that show so much. I love the theme of it. And Adam West has such a comforting voice, you know? And great costume. I need to get
the costume. I'm not crazy about the nose
I love
marks.
It. I think it's hilarious. They just took like the Saturday morning like comic strip panel that Batman was in at that point, and they like just literally adapted it to screen using paper or whatever. It was the cheapest material for the suit. It's great. It's fantastic. Second place is Batfleck. I just choose Batfleck's number 2 because as movies. The Nolan trilogy are, of course, my favorite Batman movies.
Oh, and I think everyone would agree.
Yeah, but even Christian Bale himself, in years since doing it, he's always said the best part of those movies are the villains that he feels.
Especially in The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger is that movie.
Yeah, so Christian Bale, as much as he's a great Batman, he was always second fiddle to the villains, and he noticed that himself. I wish, I love those movies as they are, but I think Batfleck really. He brought his own thing to the role. In Batman vs Superman, no matter what you feel about that movie, it's pretty undeniable that Ben Affleck was at least putting his whole heart and soul into it. People hate on him because of the whole killing thing, but that's not his fault. I think in terms of performance, that Ben Affleck did an incredible job.
Well, I think the consensus on it too is even if you didn't like the movie, that Ben Affleck is pretty great. I think most people, even if they hated the beginning, have kind of come around to his portrayal, and it's aged. We talk about this in the first episode of the show. Those movies have aged very, very well in just terms of the cultural zeitgeist. But yes, happy Batman Day to all of you. Those were our favorite Batman picks. And we're going to jump to our next news topic now, which is Jonathan Majors from playing Tick on Lovecraft Country, which is a great HBO Max series that we are currently watching. if you're into horror and monster stuff, and also like very topical race commentary. It's great. It's from Jordan Peele, of course, who's
So
the
good.
master
So
of
good.
horror right now. But he has been cast as Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man 3. Tell me your thoughts on that, Kieran. What do you think about him playing Kang?
I'm going to turn it back to you. I want to hear your thoughts first.
I know very little about Kang the Conqueror
Okay.
as a character. I know that he's cool, and from the reaction I saw from some of my fans who are bigger fan, or some of my friends who are bigger fans of that character, they were a little bit surprised that they're just going to use him in Ant-Man 3. But if we know anything about Marvel, it's that the villains don't die a lot, and they can come back and play in the sandbox again. So I love Jonathan Majors. I think he can play anything. I'm bummed because the minute Lovecraft Country started and I saw him take off his shirt, I looked at you, I said, well, he should be Jon Stewart. He just should be.
He has the look.
So yeah, of course he has the look. And he has a little bit of facial hair now. And in the show he's shaved, but he has like a beard now. I'm like, he'd be perfect. He's young too. So if they do that, Green Lantern thoughts aside, Jonathan Majors is great. And I love that he's getting work. And I mean, Marvel is Marvel, and I'm sure Ant-Man 3 will be at the very least good. So I'm excited to see it, and I'm sure he'll be great, especially playing a villain. That's very interesting because Tick on Lovecraft Country is the hero, and he's kind of a troubled guy who goes through a lot and is a very compelling character, and Jonathan Majors is wonderful in the role, but it'd be interesting to see his range and see if he can play a menacing villain, let alone a super-powered menacing villain. So I know you're a little bit more knowledgeable about Kang the Conqueror than I am, so what are your thoughts?
See, I'd only put myself as being very slightly knowledgeable,
Mm-hmm.
because in the Dan Abnett run of Guardians of the Galaxy, the 2008 run that the movie is based off of, in Volume 2 of that run, which is a little bit into it, when the quality starts to go down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole time traveling plot involving the basically the Tesseract. I forget what it's called in the reality cube or whatever it's called, right? That thing. There's a whole time travel plot, and Kang the Conqueror gets involved and stuff. Also, I've read an Avengers comic he's in. What I'm excited about isn't necessarily Kang the Conqueror being in the MCU as a character, because I just have no reason to have any great, ridiculous love for it. The part that I'm excited about as a lover of Ant-Man, and Paul Rudd's portrayal of Ant-Man in the movies. My biggest problem with those movies, we talked about this the other day, but I'll go into it a little more now. Peyton Reed, not huge on Peyton Reed. I like the first Ant-Man movie a lot because I can see the Edgar Wright influences in it before he left the project. Ant-Man and the Wasp was really not a big fan of at all because it's just Peyton Reed, and it's kind of just like run-of-the-mill, going through the motions. There's cool sequences here and there, but as a through line, it's got very flat villains, and it kind of it's a little too silly, you know. I kind of want a little more from my Ant-Man, or I want it to be like a little bit crazier and wackier. It's a bit vanilla for me. So I'm excited for this because the idea of Kang the Conqueror being the villain of Ant-Man, the past two movies have been heist movies, but let's put Ant-Man in there, right? That's been their premise. There's been this thing that's been going around Instagram for as long as I can remember, really. I'm not sure if Boss Logic did it or what, but it's like it was some fan art, and it had the Ant-Man title as Ant-Man versus the something of evil, whatever the thing is, the Syndicate of Evil, or whatever that group is in Marvel Comics. And I really like that idea. Like it's not Sinister Six, but it's kind of like having a superhero team, a supervillain team like the Sinister Six, except like versus Ant-Man, Paul Rudd Ant-Man, who's like so goofy. I'm not sure if Peyton Reed is confirmed for Ant-Man 3. It would be really cool if they kicked that man to the curb and just did a Thor Ragnarok. That's what the Kang the Conqueror casting alludes to for me.
I mean, it's pretty big and cosmic for Ant-Man.
Yeah, and especially because, you know, everything like Black Widow was supposed to come out months ago, and they're now we still don't know when that's coming out. Everything is going to be put off so much more. Everything's going to have so much more time for development and to be more fully baked by the time they do make it and it comes out, because I'm sure they're working tirelessly even through all of this to make the best product they can, considering these are multi-million-dollar movies. So this is good news for me. It doesn't mean that it doesn't make or break the movie. I agree that it might. I hope it's not, but it could be a waste of I forget the actor's name, but the Lovecraft County
Jonathan Major.
Jonathan Major. It could be a waste of Jonathan Major's talent. He's given a lot to eat on Lovecraft County. There's a lot of character development. He has a lot of opportunities to show his acting skills. I hope they give him the same opportunity with Kane. I hope it's not a one-off. I hope it's not a one-off villain. I hope he's not written stupidly. I hope they kind of give a lot to the character and make an actual arc out of it. The best example I can think of for how bizarre this casting is, it reminds me of when I found out that Kurt Russell was going to be Ego the Living Planet in Guardians Volume 2. And personally, I thought he was one of the best villains in the MCU in that movie. So if that's any indicator, then Ant-Man 3 coming in hot.
Sign Kieran up for Ant-Man 3.
Absolutely.
On the topic of Marvel casting, we also got who's going to be playing She-Hulk this week on the upcoming Disney Plus series, which hasn't started filming and doesn't have a release date quite yet. But Orphan Black Star, which I've not watched, but I've heard great things. I think she was in Ready or Not as well. But Tatiana Maslany has been cast as She-Hulk in She-Hulk. And she is going to have the origin story of inheriting Bruce Banner's powers through a blood transfusion, but she will keep her personality, intelligence, and emotional control. That is a quote from her to Variety. So, Kieran, have you seen Orphan Black or any of the work of Tatiana Maslany? And thoughts on her playing She-Hulk, if you have?
I haven't seen it, but I've seen clips, and I'm very familiar with the show, and that it's supposed to be extremely good. I know that in the show, the whole premise of it is she's the main character, and then she finds out that she's been cloned all of these times, and there's all these random people walking around the world who have the same genetic makeup that she does, because somebody's a clone. I'm not sure if she's the clone or they're the clones or what's happening, but there's a bunch of clones. All of them are played by her, and they're all different characters. And I think she won an Emmy for it, or a Golden Globe. Or if she didn't win either, she definitely got nominated at least a few times. But there's a claim to her performance. I've heard she's a very good actress. I feel like I've probably seen her in stuff, and I can't remember. But I'm all for that casting. I think that's cool. I'm not sure if they're going to – the thing I'm curious of is, will they make her Bruce Banner's cousin? Because that's what she is in the comics.
There's not much information about which character she's playing. It's just that she gets the blood powers through a blood transfusion. So
she'll definitely play She-Hulk, but I'm just wondering. Yeah. I wonder if they're gonna change her backstory.
I mean, why would Bruce be given a blood transfusion to anyone that's not family? Maybe that'll be the plot. That's some deductive reasoning for you. Yeah. But I have not seen her in anything. But looking at a photo of her right now, she kind of looks like Mark Ruffalo, which is a little bit funny, and also plays into that idea that they could be family. But not much is known about this series, what story it's going to be telling. I wish I could say I'm still super pumped for these Disney Plus Marvel series, but it feels like they're never going to come out. However, this is also news that we should have been covering that I forgot about, but Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or I think WandaVision actually, is still slated to come out in 2020. It is still shooting for a release date this year, so that would be cool. We'd finally get at least a little snippet of what kind of the vibe of those shows are going to be. Are they going to be cinematic? I imagine they'll be up to the normal standard for Marvel because they're directly involved in the universe. They're not like the Defenders on Netflix where they were like kind of are but kind of aren't.
Have you seen Daredevil, by the way?
I saw the first season of Daredevil.
Okay. I love Daredevil.
It was great. I'm bad with TV. I'm very bad about watching seasons of TV. Yeah. Everyone knows I'm a big DC guy, and I haven't seen Titans season 2 or any of the Arrowverse. I saw the first season. I've seen the first season of Arrow. Yeah. TV's hard for me. It's hard to keep
as someone, this is very much an offshoot. We'll go back talking about She-Hulk in like 2 seconds. But as somebody who has seen, I've seen as much of Titans as you have. I've seen The Flash. I've seen the first few seasons of Arrow before it got terrible. Daredevil is next level.
Daredevil did obviously have a higher quality than the CW shows for sure. Yeah. Just in terms of budget and the way it's presented, it's very cinematic. No, I really liked the first season. Yeah. I liked how gritty it was. It kind of felt Batman-y, and I really enjoyed that. But again, TV is hard for me.
Second season has Elektra and Punisher, and third season has what's his name? Bullseye, I think is his name, right?
Yeah.
The really crazy Daredevil.
Mm.
So they're all really great. So I to keep watching that. But
And I wanted to watch the Punisher spinoff too. But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say because there's not much about that series. She-Hulk's a character I know a little bit about. I like Hulk. I'm excited to see more because I think the MCU, that's one thing they haven't fully capitalized on is this kind of like Hulk mythos and more backstory. He is more of a device in these movies than a proper character, even though Mark Ruffalo is great.
Mhm.
But I think they realized that you can sprinkle a little Hulk into a lot of stuff and it makes it more interesting. But
Yeah.
you had a thought?
Yeah, well, first of all, just on that, another thing about it is that physically they can't make a Hulk movie because Universal still owns the
Right.
standalone movie rights to the Hulk.
Mhm.
So instead, I think Mark Ruffalo, from interviews I've seen, he's all behind that because he's like, they realize that they can just put me in all these other movies, and if you edit together his scenes in the other movies, he's like, it kind of makes an arc for the Hulk. And I'm like, I'm all for that. There's haters of the Hulk's depiction in the MCU, but I like it. Take
I
the
like it.
It's fine.
I'm not a huge Hulk stan, so I'm not going to be upset about it, but
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it.
But
I think there's more Hulk this way.
yeah, a cool thing about She-Hulk, this is only rumors at this point, but it was in the same article I read. The head writer is rumored to be like one of the few female writers who works on Rick and Morty.
Oh, cool.
That's really cool because then they're totally going for the comedy feel. They're going to try to make it like sort of silly and go for that, which is, I mean, like She-Hulk is a lawyer, I believe. That's her whole plot. She's not like a traditional superhero. She just happens to have superpowers. I'm looking forward to them doing something with that. I guess make a grounded story that happens to have somebody who's superpowered. If that's what it is, sign the K-Man up.
Yeah, I'm in too. I'm kind of a little bit in the dark on this one just because I haven't seen any of her work. But I expect she's great. And if she won Emmys for a series that I heard wonderful things about, then I'm sure she's very talented. And, more women heroes. I'm all for it.
And she's British.
There you go.
They're just better at acting in the first
Winning.
place. Yeah.
Winning.
Exactly.
But our final bit of Hollywood news, quite a bit of a comic book movie news this week, is we got I guess this is television news. We got the slate of directors who will be doing episodes of Miss Marvel, which is coming sooner than She-Hulk, I expect. So the first pairing, which is this from the Hollywood Reporter, is, I'm going to butcher this name, I apologize, Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah, who were the two directors behind Bad Boys for Life, which I heard was actually quite good and got really good reviews that kind of revitalized that franchise. They will be another director on the series will be Mira Menon, who directed episodes of The Punisher, Walking Dead, and Titans, which I have seen Titans and a little bit of The Walking Dead. And I don't know if I've seen her specific episodes, but those are very successful shows. Multiple Oscar and Emmy-winning director Charmin Obaid Chinoy, who has done a lot of documentaries, but has been tapped to direct for this Disney Plus series as well. And then there's head writer of the series will be Shakay Ali, and then Kevin Feige will be producing, obviously. We do not have any casting yet. Casting is underway. This is Kamala Khan, so we'll have a Pakistani hero for the first time, and she'll be a teenager in New Jersey. So, Kieran, if you can recall that long list of directors I just handed out, what do you think?
I mean, there's room for opportunity there for good stuff. I haven't seen Bad Boys for Life. When you said that, it kind of didn't inspire a crazy amount of hope in me, just because that's like a very generic kind of money-making, run-of-the-mill sort of blockbuster, from my understanding anyway.
I heard it was pretty good, actually.
I've never seen any of the Bad Boys movies, so I'm talking straight out of my asshole.
Well, I don't think they're high cinema, but
yeah. But I think I love Kamala Khan as a character. I read Champions, which was that like young Avengers type thing they did for a little bit. And I've read #1 of her standalone series that got a lot of acclaim, and she's clearly a very popular character. I know she's the protagonist of the Avengers game that came out recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she is. I like from I haven't played it, but that's what I read. So I'm psyched. I think they're definitely, despite who's directing individual episodes, I feel like Miss Marvel is an important enough character. And like when to emphasize again, like her volume 1 of her comic like sold out Scholastic book fairs.
Really?
It was really popular with
I mean, she's got a big name, Mrs. Marvel.
Yeah, she went beyond that. That was one of those comics that went beyond just the comic book market and went into the like children's book market basically
Hmm.
because it's this really forward superhero and it's the first like Pakistani American Muslim superhero.
Awesome.
Really
Yeah.
cool, really cool. Yeah. So
The rumor on the street is that Captain Marvel is going to appear in this series and kind of mentor her, similar to a Shazam Superman relationship in the comics.
yeah.
That's awesome. I'm all for that. I would love to
Also
see that.
also 100% like I've really have very little doubt that that rumor is true. That seems like something that Brie Larson would 100% want
I
to
mean, it
do.
just seems too easy to
Yeah.
not do. You know,
Yeah.
it's so
Exactly.
obvious. Use
It's like
like your prominent Superman character in Captain Marvel, who is great. I know she's like, for the dumbest reasons ever, semi-controversial
mhm,
amongst comic book fans,
yeah.
but who cares? Brie
There's
Larson's great in the role, and Captain Marvel's a cool character.
Yeah, there's a really cool issue of Miss Marvel that I read,
Hmm.
where it was about it's like a team up with Miss Marvel and Wolverine, and during the whole thing, during their adventure, their dialogue, their conversation is about why Miss Marvel chooses the name Miss Marvel, right, and not have her own name, right, as opposed like why she wants to take on the old mantle of another superhero, but like she's the cool thing about her too is that she's just a huge fan of superheroes. You know, like she would be a guest on this podcast and she would have a lot to say on it if she were real. Um,
Relatable.
yeah, exactly, and people, of course, comics fans are going to eat that up because they like to see themselves. It's you're seeing
Part of
yourself.
the gig.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's kind of. I remember when we went to see Shazam, when we were predicting what was going to happen in that movie. You really wanted Superman to show up like halfway through the movie, and
Oh
then
yeah,
train Shazam, and that be part of it. That's what it sounds like with Captain Marvel
we're
and
gonna
Miss
get
Marvel.
that. Yeah,
Cool.
I totally agree, and
Yeah.
we'll obviously talk more about it when we get a casting for Miss Marvel. But the lineup of directors sounds cool. I mean, none of it like blows me away. None of it concerns me. They sound like all capable people. It's interesting that they have someone with a documentary background. That's kind of a bold choice to have, because those are very different mediums to direct in. So to have them cross over could be interesting. But I'm excited for all this news. A lot of solid news. But before we get into our weekly issues and a little bit of catch up that we played, um, we are going to take our quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the fifth episode of the New Adventures of K-Man and Spence. We're going to jump into the issues we read this week and what stuck out to us. So this last week, we picked up quite a few back issues because we finally tracked them down after weeks of trying. But we got Tom Taylor's Constantine, or I think Hellblazer Rise and Fall is what it's officially called, #1. We got Dead Planet #1, Deceased Dead Planet, even though we have 2 more issues to fully catch up on that. We got Batman 99, which I don't think you got to, but you got up to 98, so you're doing better. Um, you got to part 4 of Joker War. We picked up Strange Adventures #3 finally, so we were able to read 3 through 5 to get caught up to Strange Adventures. And then we got the back issues of something we talked about the first episode, but haven't got to until now, which is Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy, which is a spinoff of the Black Hammer universe at Dark Horse, which we hadn't read before, but Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy art caught our eye when we were setting up our pull list, as it tends to happen. So yeah, Kieran, we got Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy up to issue 5, so we're all caught up in that, or issue 4, I believe, caught up to that as well. So Kieran, what stuck out to you in that long list of comics I just ran down?
Well, I love Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy, but I
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about that after we talk about Strange Adventures.
Got it.
Yes. I like the series a lot. I have to say, #1 caught me a lot more than ones since then have, just because I'm very confused. I know that's the idea, but it's in a way where like I'm not sure it's the greatest way to use the weekly series. I feel like I would like Strange Adventures if I was binge reading it and if it was all in one big collection, because I very much feel every time I read a new issue, it's like what happened last time again?
That's how
What
I
was
felt,
the
and it made
detail?
me want to reread 1 and 2 to understand 3 through 5. But I have 3 through 5 right here in front of me. We got
Yeah.
one of the variants, I think, but
and I have number
This is
one.
Tom King and Mitch Gerrits doing the art. I think with Evan Shaner doing the color.
Yeah.
Just to add that context. But yeah, I think it's highly, highly confusing. I like it, and I'm waiting until at the end when it all clicks. But they jump around in time a lot. And it will randomly jump back in time to a scene that happened in an earlier issue and kind of just continue that conversation. So I think it's telling a narrative like all out of sorts, out of whack. And that's a really good point that I might recommend reading this more when it's collected. So you can get through the whole thing and then hopefully be able to look back on it and it all makes sense. Because right now, like, I like it. I like the storyline. I like the mystery. I like that Mr. Terrific is like a huge part of this. And I really enjoy Adam Strange. And like the mystery is Adam Strange kind of like a war criminal? I think that's a really interesting route to take.
Shout out to the art. The art's beautiful too.
It's awesome. Mitch Gerrits is killing it with that. And I really like the mystery. I like this idea. It's a very interesting story. And I think Tom King is a great writer, problems aside, of Tom King. But it's just really, really, really confusing. And I finished it before you did. And I was like, I told you, I'm curious to see what you think about this because I have no idea like what the F is going on. I truly don't.
I can't tell if it's real deep or if it's fake deep, and that's what concerns me.
I think the only way to know is to finish it. It's a 12-issue miniseries, so I guess that's just like a series. I guess at that point, I don't know if 12 issues is mini. That's gonna collect it. It's gonna be like 300 pages probably. Mm-hmm. But I think once we finish it, we'll look back on it and say if we liked it or not. The first issue, you're right, grabs you. And so I'm hooked still. Like I still want to know what's going on. I really like the story. I loved Superman showing up, and I really loved the exchange that Adam has with Superman and with Hal Jordan. And they're both like, we can't help you, dude. Like, I'm sorry. You need to figure this out yourself. I thought that was really cool. I always get excited when I open an issue of something that's not Superman, and on the front page it says Superman created by Jerry Siegel and whatever, and I'm like, cool. So he's going to be in this.
Yeah.
So it's like a spoiler, but it's also like a little tease for me as like a huge Superman fanboy where I'm like, yes.
Yeah. The thing about it is scene to scene, every individual scene on its own, I love. Like the way it's written, the way the characters are written, the dialogue's all very good. The art, the way they juxtapose this more kind of gritty, realistic art in the present day versus flashbacks, which are portrayed.
I was going to point that out too. The flashbacks are very polished and comic booky and stylish, but the present day is almost like Alex Ross style realism.
Yeah. It's like an oil painting kind of.
Yeah, and that's really cool and that's really interesting. So like, I like everything about this, and it's all contingent on when it ends. Does it make sense? If it doesn't, then I will look back on it negatively because it truly doesn't make sense right now. Yeah,
it's a 12 issue miniseries. When we have all 12 issues, I'm sure the same for you. I want to go back and just
like a full retrospective.
Read it all the way through because like I said, individually scenes are great. There's so many scenes I'm reading in this where I'm like, I don't know where this is in the continuity. And because I'm reading these with such a big pause in between, I'm forgetting these scenes, and I'm not going to be able to think to myself, oh, that works or that doesn't work, because I literally won't be able to remember it.
And I don't want to have to, every week I get a new issue, have to go back and read all of them to the present.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point. I'm going to read them all as they come monthly now because we're caught up finally, thank God. But I think it's going to really, we're going to be able to tell if it holds up or not when we have it all in front of us to read.
Definitely do not trust Mrs. Strange at all.
No, she's super full of crap. 100%. I think he did something sketchy and they're covering it up for sure. At least they're really like giving us a red herring of don't trust him.
Yeah, I really hope though, the way that I see it going at the moment is that they're going to scapegoat it all onto Mrs. Strange as if she's like manipulating, controlling Adam Strange in some way.
That would not be a great ending.
I hope they don't do that.
Yeah.
Because that seems kind of like blaming the woman, you know? It's sort of like the Lady Macbeth style of storytelling where you kind of like
Macbeth still killed people, man. You can't really.
Yeah, and you're portraying kind of a woman's sexuality as something that's evil, you know, which is that's very dated at this point. So I hope that's not what they're doing. But also I know that Tom King, sometimes way more to the extreme, is a very woke guy on Twitter anyway, or he's whether he's authentically woke or he's performatively woke on Twitter. Either way, I feel like I feel like that wouldn't be very in line for him, but also maybe he's a giant hypocrite and maybe that is what they're doing. Who
Right.
knows? I've also learned a lot more about Tom King since we started reading the series. His Mr. Miracle series I have not read. Just to emphasize, I've said a bunch of times it won awards because it did win awards. I've never read it myself. But I do know that Tom King is a controversial writer in DC
Mm.
Comics. I think it's because he's very progressive, and it's the people who are like the toxic fan people who don't like him very much. But who knows?
He's
There might
very
be
outspoken about
yeah,
it too.
there might be something more to that. There might be he might I think he's just a guy who doesn't like to admit that he's wrong ever. So if he does something controversial with a comic book, like he might in Strange Adventures as it goes on, I don't feel like we're ever going to get to a point where he admits that. It's either going to be great or not great, and I think Tom King is just hit or miss. I think that's kind of the thing. So right now it's up in the air. I'm enjoying them because it's physically written very well, but it's going to depend if the structure, the plot he has in mind works or not.
Hmm. Okay, Kieran, you can talk about Skull Digger now.
Fuck yes, I loved this comic. I've
What
been
issue
waiting.
are we up to? Are we at 5 or
We're
4?
we're at 3 because it all got called off because of COVID. So the next
Oh, so
issue,
we just had 1 and we got 2 and 3.
yeah.
Okay.
The next issue, it's the 19th today. I think the new issue. I think 23rd is Wednesday, and so we're getting a new Skull Digger this coming week.
Oh
But
yeah.
we caught up on all the backlog ones, which is great. I'm happy. Also, when we were assembling our poll list, I looked up like best indie comics I should be reading right now. And as I scrolled down the list, they had like if you like this, if you like that. For Skull Digger, they said if you like cool colors and art, this is the one to go for. It's kind of trippy. It's so good, dude. Like we read the second issue first, and the second issue opens with like Skeleton Boy is kidnapped by Skull Digger, and we were thinking it was like a hostage situation, and that he just kidnapped this orphan boy, and that there was kind of no greater thing to it. It was just kind of a true anti-hero, right? Which it
Hmm.
is. It seems to be that based on the ending of the first issue, which sets up the series wonderfully. Reading back on it, and I reread the second issue and I read the third issue again.
I read it all in one sitting too. I
It's
redid
so
it.
great. It's
Yeah.
so great. It's so I wanna see more of this character. It takes place in 1996. I love that they're just like making a universe that's very clearly inspired by late 90s Frank Miller inspired.
It's almost like a period piece comic run, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's great. I really like the cliffhanger of issue 3 of Grim Jim is Skulldigger's father. What does that mean? Is Grim Jim Skulldigger's father in the sense that Skulldigger is Skeleton Boy's dad and he brought him up as becoming Skulldigger, or is Skulldigger literally like a quarter demon since Grim Jim is half demon? If you don't know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, and you haven't read Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy, that's a massive spoiler. But Grim Jim is this weird like pink serial killer demon person.
He's
Super bad ass. Like,
skull
yeah,
face. Yeah.
super cool character. He like jumps down, tries to kill the mayor. It's very interesting. I love this world a lot, and I want to read the Black Hammer series now and just try and get versed in that universe because we're both aspiring screenwriters. We're in film school, so I think this could be a universe that you could pitch to an MGM or a Paramount or something and say, "Here's your bread and butter. If you want to do superheroes, do Black Hammer universe."
Yeah.
Could be really
Absolutely.
cool. That's what I was thinking. I was like, this is a really untapped potential in terms of storytelling on and other mediums because it's very, very well done. I like the characters a lot. I like Skeleton Boy. I like that he shows up. I mean, had we not read the first issue, we wouldn't have known that this miniseries is going to end with Skeleton Boy killing Skulldigger. That they set up that foreshadowing where he literally says he's the first person that I killed, and you're like, oh, so that's how this is going to end. They tell you in the first issue that's how this is going to end.
Yeah.
At least that was my interpretation of it.
I hope it's. I don't know how long it's running for. I hope it's not a limited series. I hope it
Didn't you
keeps
say it was?
going.
It was only like 10 issues or something?
It might be. They might have said that to me at some point. I'm not sure. If it is, that's also totally fine. But I like these characters. I hope that that's a red herring. I hope that Skeleton Boy doesn't actually kill Skulldigger.
I'd be all in on that.
I want Skulldigger to continue though. I want to see more from this character. His like chain, his ball and chain with the skull on it is cool.
It's pretty cool.
The whole like, you know why I saved you because you didn't look away.
That is cool as well.
That was great. The part where he goes to fight Grim Jim, he makes his grand entrance, and then like later on, Skeleton Boy shows up, and it's like, who are you? And he goes, I'm Skeleton Boy. Like pops the smoke bomb down with his sick ass sneakers on. It's great. It's fantastic, and the coloring is so cool. The way it's like semi glow in the dark looking sometimes with their costumes. I have a huge heart on for the series. It's
Oh
fantastic.
my
It's so
God.
good. It's so good. I love it.
It
Fantastic.
is. It is really good. The other one that we both read together. You didn't read Constantine or Dead Planet, so I'll give my quick thoughts at the end of the show. But Joker War, James Tynion's big climactic Batman crossover. You finished issue 98, and we got 99 this week. So you haven't had a chance to get to it because you read comics slow, which is fine. You appreciate the art. I'm more of a story guy, so I kind of get excited and I run through it.
That's very accurate. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
It's true. But you got to end of 98, which sets up 99. 99 is a great issue. It has a great cliffhanger ending, which sucks because I have to wait a month. What sucks about being caught up with these comics is that now I'm like, oh man, I got to wait like a month to see the next part versus if you're playing catch up, it's like reading graphic novels. You just get big stacks of issues and you just flip through them. But now we have to wait to find out how Joker War is ending. You had an interesting thought on this earlier while we had a breakfast together. So tell me what you were saying about Joker War, Kieran?
Can you remind me of what specific thought that you're thinking of?
You were saying that it feels a little run of the mill for how much you like what James Tynion's doing with the character. It almost feels like it wasn't his fault to do Joker War.
Yeah. It seems like it's been a problem for a few years on both the Marvel end and the DC end. I'm thinking of crossovers like just unnecessary crossover, like Robin Wars. I didn't read that. I didn't hear great things. It's a great title. It's a great premise for a series, but it kind of seemed half-baked. There was that one Divergence or whatever there was a few years ago, or Convergence or whatever it's called, which was just like supposed to be terrible. Again, I watched a YouTube video that covered that whole thing. There's like these, and like the Deathstroke versus Teen Titans Judas Contract, that was another one. Like I'm just thinking of random.
Judas Contract's pretty good. I don't think that deserves hate.
Is that the old one, or are you thinking the old one or the newer one?
I could be thinking of the old one.
The old
I'm
one?
directly thinking right now about the animated film.
Okay, different. That's a different thing. Because
Okay.
they did recently they did like the current Teen Titans versus Deathstroke, like a crossover comic.
Got it.
Crossover comics just like it's cool when it's done well, but it's a hard thing to do well. This Joker Wars, as much as individually the premises is very cool, I'm a big fan of Clown Hunter. If he has any solo work release, I want to read that.
We've already gotten confirmed Punchline's getting a one-shot, I think in
Yes.
October, maybe November from Tynion, which I'll be reading because I like that character a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt that it's been discussed, but we haven't heard anything.
Clown Hunter is James Tynion's profile picture on Twitter. So
I would say
I feel like he's gonna do some stuff with that, and I think that's very also lines up with my usual taste in comics because Talon, like a weird Batman offshoot character that James Tynion comes up with, he's really good at that. So for both, I think he came up with Punchline too. So for both, you like Punchline a lot, I like Clown Hunter a lot. Both of them are great spin-off characters. So Tynion is definitely like really doing and making the most out of what this crossover is. But I don't think this is going to be heralded as one of the great Batman stories when it has the potential to with a name like Joker Wars.
I'm curious what you think of 99 once you get to it, because it's pretty big and I like it a lot. It's grand in scope. However, 98 might have my favorite Batman panel I've read in a long time, where Punchline is, spoiler if you haven't read Joker War, I don't know why. If you aren't, I would definitely recommend adding it to your list. It's Batman. You can't really go wrong with having Batman on your pull list, in my opinion at least. It's Batman. And it's Batman Day, you dick. So add it to your list. But there's a great scene where Harley Quinn and Punchline are fighting. And Batman basically has been tripping on acid this whole time because he got dosed with Joker toxin. And then Harley Quinn gave him her own toxin to get rid of the Joker toxin because Harley Quinn is helping Batman. And it makes sense because she's like, no, Joker has gone too far and he's burning everything in the ground, and Punchline's the worst. And there's a great banter and scene between Harley Quinn and Punchline fighting, but Batman stands up after being on the ground tripping, and Punchline's like, that's impossible. The toxin is rampaging through your body. Like, this is impossible. And Batman just cuts her off, jumps, cape, flapping out. And it says, I'm Batman in the cape. And it's the perfect counter to anything she could have said. That's impossible, hyphen, like she's being cut off. And he goes, I'm Batman. Like, F you. It's not impossible.
Another
I'm super awesome.
Another thing I noticed about it, because there was another, I read these issues like in a very small frame of time, or after the other. Every time he's done that in this comic run, he always like jumps like this, right? I can't even like really portray it right, but
Very Christ-like.
he's got his cape out. It's not like usually he goes like this, but in this run he's like this, and it's because his Batman logo is a lot more narrow than other ones. Like
I like his Batman logo a lot.
I like it a lot. I love his costume in this. I was about to say that. Yeah, like his art. The art in this is super cool, and his costume, the design for it, badass. But I like that detail too. That the exact way that he's in that Batman shape lines up perfectly with his logo on his suit. I'm so tempted, dude, someday anyway, to get that Batman frame as a tattoo because
it'd be such a sick tattoo.
It's a really cool Batman logo. It really is. Yeah.
But yeah, Joker War for me is working really well. I don't think it's reinventing the wheel in terms of like storytelling. I think it's very grand, but it's also too big to be a movie. I was thinking about that reading, and I was like, it's too much side character, too much, because a lot of movies now, comic movies at least, are adapting. Especially Marvel will even include like arcs in their names for movies. I don't think you could ever do a Batman Joker War movie without heavily altering it, because there's just so much going on. Like there's the supervillain hideaway with Penguin and Catwoman, and they're all there and like kind of hiding from Joker, which I think is pretty funny. And then you have the Joker Batman, and Batman being dosed and tripping out for 3 issues. You have Punchline fighting Harley Quinn. There's a lot going on, and a lot of side character focus. In '99, spoiler for you, Kieran, Dick Grayson's in it. No longer Rick Grayson. Dick is back as Dick, which is cool. And I think Rick Grayson was probably not a good idea in the first place.
I love me some Dick.
Yeah, me too. That was nice. But Nightwing shows up. I can't spoil it for you. Just watch it. Or watch it. I think of these things like movies, people. Read it. It's great. But I would recommend Joker War a lot. And especially 98 is a super kick-ass issue. And Batman's back. He's done with his tripping, and he's ready to kick some ass. So we are going to wrap today's show up with me just giving brief thoughts on more Tom Taylor. Shocking. Spence liking Tom Taylor.
Yeah, please give me the non-spoiler pitch, because
I will give you the non-spoiler review.
I'm excited to read these myself.
Of both Hellblazer Rise and Fall, which I really like how big this is in terms of like actually like size. Like it's like I think it's like an 8x11 instead of like a normal narrower comic book. It's really big, and the art's awesome, and it's Tom Taylor. It tells Constantine's origin story, which is interesting that he's going like full like from the beginning on. This is like John Constantine. And then, of course, Deceased Dead Planet #1. They're up to issue 3 now. I think 4 comes next month, and I'm going to try and catch up by then. I'm still struggling to find back issues. I'm just going to start driving to all the comic book stores in my area and just calling and be like, do you have it? No. Do you have it? No. Okay. But we got the variant cover of this, which is cool. It's like Blade Runner inspired with Constantine, and I think that is Cass as Wonder Woman. And it looks like Dr. Fate. I don't remember if Dr. Fate was in the issue itself, but it was really great. It gets right back to business. I'm talking about Deceased first, killing off big heroes and having some crazy zombie apocalypse stuff. It pulls no punches as usual. It's Tom Taylor. It's funny. There's great Oliver Queen in this first issue. Great Jonathan Kent and Damian Wayne exchange. You were talking about Super Sons, and I was like, oh, I can't wait till you read the first issue of this, because they have really wonderful banter. This isn't a spoiler, but there's a bit where Jonathan's talking to Damian, and Damian's doing something on an alien planet, and Jonathan's like, Damian says something like, the person's like, why would we help you? And Damian's like, you ever seen your spleen? And Jonathan over the radio is like, Damian, damn it. It's really funny. It's Tom Taylor. He's funny. But Dead Planet is great. It jumps right back in. For a first issue, especially because I was fresh off of reading Unkillables and Deceased recently, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to jump into this world again, and it was awesome. And yeah, I recommend. High recommend. That's about as non-spoiler as I can go, even with a little spoiled joke. So I'm sorry.
What's interesting about Constantine, though, right? Just to talk about Hellblazer.
And he's in the bar again in this, which I loved so much in Deceased. Is like the interdimensional bar where he just sits and gets drunk.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, I believe that he's from the Sandman universe originally. Constantine is a character.
I don't know a lot about his initial appearance. Yeah. I know his origin just as John Constantine.
Yeah,
but.
He was owned by another company before he was bought by DC.
Yes,
Him and
that's
a few other
correct.
characters. Yeah. So, but what's interesting is from the back of a comic I saw, it seems like they're doing Hellblazer with James Tinney, and that takes place in the DC universe, from my understanding. And then they're also doing another Constantine series that's also called Hellblazer, but this one's called like Hellblazer Rise and Fall. But there's another Hellblazer that's running right now that's in the Sandman universe, and they're
Yes.
both running parallel to each other, which is
This one is a Black Label. That's why it's like its own thing. Yes.
oh, okay, gotcha.
This is a Tom Taylor Black Label
Okay,
miniseries.
that makes me even more hyped for it because Black
It's
Label is awesome.
it's
So
great.
yeah,
But yes, my thoughts on Dead Planet are good. But since we're talking about John Constantine already, let's jump into Hellblazer, which is Tom Taylor with Derek Robertson's art, and it's really cool. Again, I said earlier, it tells the origin story of John Constantine. As it starts with him as a kid. Basically, he's beginning to solve this crimes of someone who's murdering people and like sewing angel wings into their back and like throwing them off buildings. So very poetic. Angels falling, like the devil. Get it? Do you get it? And John Constantine has to solve those murders, and they play up his relationship with Aisha, who's a character in this who is kind of an off and on love interest. They play up the captain of the police, who's a really sweet guy. At least I think he's the captain. He might be her partner. I'm not remembering it fully. I read it a couple days ago, but super sweet guy, and he has a very interesting moment in this that I like. But it's pretty straightforward.
is that Gary? Is his name Gary?
Yes.
That's the your Wizard Gary part that I saw on Twitter.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's it's Black Label. It swears a lot. There's a lot of drinking. It's John Constantine. It's exactly what I wanted because I loved exactly.
Did you say drinking?
Drinking, yes. But what sold me on this was in Deceased, the first just Deceased collected. You and I both, John Constantine really stuck out to us. Like, wow, Tom Taylor is really writing him well. He's extremely funny. Him and Oliver Queen were the biggest takeaways for me from that initial series. And that's why I jumped onto this. And I was like, oh, a Black Label miniseries from Tom Taylor doing Constantine, I'm in. And it's really good. And it's poetic that it's angels falling. I want to talk about the ending, but you haven't read it yet. And the ending plays into exactly what I'm talking about right now. But non-spoiler thoughts are it's really good. It's not like mind-blowing for a first issue. Like I'm hooked because I liked it, but I'm definitely excited to see where it goes. I think it's going to be only 3 issues. I think the next one doesn't come out until November, unfortunately, but they're pretty solid books. I mean, this is easily like a 60-page issue, and it's like big physically. So makes sense that they're not producing a whole lot of them because it probably would cost a lot more money to do so. But I'm excited that Tom Taylor's getting that treatment from DC with like, oh, you want to do Constantine? Let's give you like these special prestige big book size and do a Black Label run. And I'm enjoying that first issue a lot. So I'm curious for you to read it.
I want to read that definitely. I might also add to our pull list Joker and Harley because you know that series is running right now.
Criminal Insanity.
That one.
It's Cami Garcia who did Raven and Beast Boy. I would be interested in doing that too.
It's supposed to be really good. She was on. I saw her tweeting about it. And
it's supposed to be like very dark. It's Black Label, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there was a list of like the best comics you should be reading right now, and it was up there with Deceased, Dead Planet. So it's supposed to. I'm
100% on board to read it.
And I think that's a bigger one too. I think that's a bigger.
Is it?
Size too. Yeah.
I mean, we both love Cami Garcia. So.
I'll have more time this week to our faithful listeners if there are any. I will do my very damnedest to catch up by next week. I don't have as much homework this week, so I'll do my best. That's my closer.
With my endorsement of both Hellblazer Rise and Fall #1 and Dead Planet #1, and hopefully by next week I will have my hands on 2 and 3 of Dead Planet, so we can be fully caught up on Tom Taylor's wonderful Deceased universe. But with that, we are going to end the show. Thank you so much for listening to the new adventures of K-Man and Spence. If you liked listening to the show, you can support us by going on anchor.fm/the new adventures of K-Man and Spence and supporting our show by donating to us, which would be unbelievably kind. Rating our show 5 stars, 2 thumbs up, anything that you can think of that would help us grow our small community of comics fanatics. Again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week. Writing and producing for this episode of The New Adventures of K-Man and Spence was done by myself, Spencer Bennett, and my co-host, Kieran Collins. Editing was done by Spencer Bennett. Our logo was created by Spencer Bennett. Our music was composed by Brandon LaBelle. This show is a proud participant in the Deconstructed Podcast Network, which includes Unofficial Experts, hosted by Preston Moore, which wrapped its first season last week with me as the guest, actually. This is a Deconstructed Podcast, and Maybe You Should Care political discussion. Link is in the description. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week, comic fans.
Hey, man!